Hello everyone, my name is Jenna Mandernack, and this is a service learning presentation on my service learning experience as an MSOT mentor this past semester. So what is an MSOT mentor? This is a second-year MSOT student that supplements the simulated learning process for first-year MSOT students. As an MSOT mentor, this student will assume patient and OT roles during simulations, assist with various needed tasks, and assist with the Education on 2 OT practice area settings. So this is the MSOT Mentor service learning experience broken down in 3 parts. The first one is I help support the experiential learning of first-year MSOT students in Cohort B during simulations and during some in-class activities. For the next one, I fulfilled patient roles and OT roles in simulation. I helped with post-sim documentation, and I offered peer feedback during debriefing sessions. And then the third and last part of my service learning experience was that I created 2 videos interviewing 2 SVSU OT alumni to better understand the OT role in different practice settings, and we will get into that later in the video. And next I have my SLP plan. There's a lot of things on this 3-page document. The one that I want to highlight the most, just because I don't have it on a separate slide, is the identification of community needs. So the target audience includes 30 first-year MSOT students at SVSU. This service learning project was created in the identification that there is a need for more peer and simulated patient support in simulations and in other in-class activities. There is a need as there is an unbalanced ratio when it comes to faculty and staff offering MSOT student support and written and verbal feedback during simulation debriefing. From a needs assessment administered in a separate OT graduate course, it was noted frequently by first and second year MSOT students that the additional support was needed in simulations and other in-class activities to enhance and cultivate the learning experience for current and future MSOT students. So there's a lot of things on these documents, and then for the next few pages of this presentation, I'll dive into it a little bit more. In here, I have a mentor schedule that was provided to me by my service learning coordinator. There are 6 dates in which I met. All the times were predetermined on which days I would go, and it was conveniently outside of class time, so Tuesdays I'd go in the afternoons, and then Fridays as well. And then the last part was the practice setting videos, and she kind of gave me like a layout of what she wanted in terms of what she wanted included, so it was very organized. I mean, it was pretty much laid out, so that's the mentor schedule. I thought it'd be nice to lay out like the timeline of my service learning. So each one of these dates on the slide highlights something I was doing in simulation. So the first one was the medical equipment and management skills lab. So it was basically what we did in first years as in the acute care scavenger hunt. And then February 14th, I did acute care ICU simulations, and I simulated a patient with a hip replacement. February 21st and March 21st, they piggybacked off each other, being in the evaluation came first, and I was simulating a patient that had a frozen shoulder. And then on March 21st, I did the intervention portion of that with the first years. And then March 24th, I was working as a OT in the NICU simulation. So I was what you would call the OT expert. And we'll dive into that a little bit later because there's pictures. So that was all the days that I did in simulation. And then my final day of service learning was April 11th, and it was in class, and we focused on the different practice areas available to occupational therapy. And this was the day that my OT documentaries were due. We didn't go over them with the first years. My service learning coordinator was going to post them in a module, but we will go over those later as well. Here is my time log sheet. So there's a lengthy description of each activity performed, the time I was doing, and then the hours, and then whether I was directly or indirectly involved. And then outside of the 6 days I met up for like in-person direct learning, I do have a few things in here for the OT documentaries, so that it got me a little bit over 24 hours, which was the minimum for this project. But all in all, it was a good experience. I wanted to highlight my learning objectives that I created for this service learning project. So my first one was to increase professional judgment and understanding needed for the implementation of teaching and learning principles for the diverse needs of the first-year MSOT students. And then the second one was to demonstrate skills in the role and responsibility of the occupational therapist during simulated activities for the first-year MSOT students. I also thought it'd be important to highlight those who I was supporting in this service role, and that was the MSOT students. So the first learning objective for them was to increase knowledge and understanding of the occupational therapy role through peer support in a simulated therapy environment. And then the second one was to enhance the MSOT learning experience in simulation and other in-class activities via verbal and written feedback as peer support. And here we have the SLP implementation assignment. There's a lot of things on here, from student roles and responsibilities to the involvement of the population served, which is the first year MSOT students, and how I was helping in a direct and indirect way. And then it has a lengthy description for the identification and evaluation tools, and then the measurement of outcomes and how I planned on doing that. Here are pictures from the EBP OBP intervention day that I did with the first year students. So again, I was simulating a patient with frozen shoulder. So a lot of PNF and pendulum activities in the simulation were prevalent. So in the first picture, I have PNF patterns while washing windows. The patient I was simulating didn't like sap on the window, so this student chose to do that. And then I was also on a horseshoe league. So pendulum for playing horseshoe was very occupation-based, and it was fun. And then third one was I worked at Myers, so it was very important for me to get back to the job. So the third one's job task modifications and me working on overhead lifting. And then I also had a dog named Gigi, so me playing with the dog and feeding the dog was very important. So we had PNF patterns for playing with a dog. And then that fifth one was PNF stretching and supine, just because I was uncomfortable during sleep. And then the last one is a home exercise program instruction with a pillow, which was very innovative and obviously necessary for someone who has frozen shoulder. And then next I have pictures from the NICU simulation with N5. This was an interprofessional simulation where I was the only OT student or anyone from occupational therapy there to help instruct these students on the OT role in a NICU with an infant who has a total brachial plexus. So this was fun. I only did 3. Nick in the morning, who was the other one, and the other cohort had to do 6. So I thought it was a lot of talking, but it was very cool, and they very friendly, asked me questions. I asked them questions as well, so I did 3 sessions that day. From that NICU simulation, something that was unexpected was this letter of thank you and kindness from Dr. Frederick and Dr. Fabro, who were running the simulations that day. This is something they sent to me via email, and it was totally unexpected, but it was very nice, and obviously it went in my e-portfolio. And then here I have the SLP outcomes assignment. Here I noted the evaluation process and findings, the impact on the project and the population served, and the link and benefit to the student education. So since this is the outcomes, I will talk about that a little bit. Outcomes are measured throughout the service learning experience during debriefing time following simulations. During this time, the first year students, other simulated lab coordinators, and I discussed and evaluated the first year students' performances in simulation and other associated lab activities. Collection was conducted via non-standardized qualitative discussion to understand and verify if needs were met. And then during the evaluation of the evidence and occupation-based practice treatment sessions, I evaluated the students by using the communication assessment tool, which is the CAT, and there I have a picture of it later on. And I filled this out following the simulation, and my service learning coordinator gave them back to the students afterwards. We went over what I filled out in like a group debrief at the end. And then during the last day of my service learning experience, I had the opportunity to ask the first year students directly about my involvement in the learning experience. This discussion was completed with all of them in the classroom, and all the questions were just asked out loud, and anyone who wanted to reply or respond could raise their hand. But I asked the questions, did having an MSOT mentor help in simulation / in the classroom? Did you value receiving feedback from a second year student? And what would you have liked to be different if you were to have an MSOT mentor all over again, which I got very valuable feedback. And if you want to pause and read it, you can take a look. This is one of the outcome measures that I use. So it's the Communication Assessment Tool Modified. I just call it the CAT. And as you can see, I could fill in the student's name, and I could do poor, fair, good, very good, or excellent, and all the things that they did. And I could also provide different comments and feedback from what they did in the simulations. All right, so I have the OT setting documentaries that I've mentioned a few times now. So for the first one, I chose PRN therapist Lauren Huebner, which is an SVSU alumni. Her video is 13 minutes and 29 seconds long, and it has her as a PRN role in Saginaw County. And then I have Aaron Wilkins, who works in inpatient rehabilitation, and he is actually out of state in Florida. His video is 16 minutes and 34 seconds long, and he is also an SVSU alumni as well. And I have both videos linked, so if you want to click on them, go ahead. So as part of the OT setting documentary, these are the list of questions or kind of like guides that I sent as an attachment in the text message I sent out to both Lauren and Aaron. On the bottom of this document, you can see where I typed up my script before I sent it out. So I just ensured that like everything was getting attained and reached and crossed off on my list of things that needed to be included in the video. But this really helped me guide my process before I even started tackling that project. Another aspect of this project that was still part of my service learning experience but was an assignment in a different class was this 3D print item. As you can see in the picture, this is a tracheostomy teaching tool that I had 3D printed for use in simulations. There was a need based off of a need voiced from my service learning coordinator just because prior to this device, they were simulating tracheostomies by taping the tube to the necks of those who were simulating as patients. And although I wasn't able to see it get used just because there weren't any tracheostomy patients on schedule for simulations, I just know it's going to be very helpful. And everyone who saw it who was a OT faculty or staff or anyone who helping in the simulations noted how helpful it'll be and just making it a little bit more of a clinical reality when it comes to working with a patient like this out in the field. Here I have the SLP reflection assignment where I answered 5 different questions based on my SLP experience. If you want to take a pause and look at it, you can go ahead. I thought it'd be nice to end with like a little summary slide. This is a snippet from one of my assignments about my experience and how helpful I thought it was. So I thought that this was such a great opportunity to refine my occupational therapy skills. As a second-year MSOT student, I thoroughly enjoyed helping support the first-year students in the classroom. Not only was it a great review of what I learned during my first year in the program, but it also helped develop my communication skills. Standing in front of 30 people is not the easiest thing or the most natural thing to do for me. I thought it was a great opportunity to practice professionalism that is slightly different than interacting with patients, but with people and peers who are my age. Considering this population, they would often ask me questions about specific things that I had to rack my brain for, especially my experience with the nursing students where I was the only OT there and was considered the expert. Once I got the hang of things, it became more natural, and I'm proud of my progression over the 24 plus hours of the service learning experience. I learned a lot from my first year students and from my experience with the nursing faculty and staff. I think that this service learning project is a great experience that every MSOT student should try to go for if given the opportunity. All right, thank you for listening to these 23 sides. I just wanted to highlight again, I would recommend being an MSOT mentor to any future second-year MSOT students. It was a wonderful experience. Thank you.